investigator because we're going back years and trying to check records, but it looks like based on that request for records, neither of them knew where that child was and presumed, I guess, that the other one had the children. So the other thing, this is the specific language, but it goes into basically filling that gap, closing that hole so that if a child doesn't show up at a school for a period of time, then it triggers a follow-up where they have to communicate with either a truancy officer or law enforcement to begin an examination of what happened to these kids. Where are they? You know, it's unbelievable to think that we've got 3 kids that fell off everybody's map for years. So that goes to the second part, as I said, within 20 days, the sending school that sent those records has to notify the truancy officer if they have not received written confirmation that that child is someplace else safe. So it shortens the window. First trigger is 10 days, second trigger is 20 days. And obviously this can be worked on, amended, or changed by the legislature. We're just suggesting there's gotta be some accountability measures so we don't have kids fall through the cracks in such a horrific way. And that is the direct donation link to the children and their needs. So that's kind of the basics of where we are. As I said, we're going to have some follow-up investigative things we're going to be doing. We're going to check much more deeply the children's physical and mental well-being. Obviously, we're going to need to get an educational assessment on where they are. Without any education for a period of years, you know, you hear how many kids across this country fell way behind from 1 year of COVID. Imagine where these kids are. And so you know, we don't have a clue. Where are they educationally in terms of acuity and also mental health and all the developmental things that happen in those critical years? You know, we don't know. And they're going to have needs with that. So it's a big undertaking, a big process, and one of the most tragic long-term abuse situations I've ever seen. I've been in this a long time. So that's kind of where we sit. Questions?
What did mom say or do to make her children so scared of leaving the house for years?
They were just scared. I don't know that she said anything particular that she's admitted to us, but they were afraid to leave. I know that much.
What's the latest with mom? I know the prosecutor's looking at this, but where is she? What's going on?
She's in custody with us.
Is she cooperating?
Yeah, I mean, she's talking to us, but we've got some follow-up secondary things that we want to ask her based on more information that's come to our attention since this originally, surprisingly, came to our attention when we were thinking we were going to check on her welfare and found 3 kids.
Any idea on the state of her mental health?
I have no information or background that she's got any mental health challenges, but obviously that will be all part of the case.
It's a message for everyone who's stepped up to make donations, whether that's been financial or all these supplies that have come in.
A heartfelt, warm thank you to everybody that has stepped up. I mean, as I said, in very short order, we got a ton of clothing, so much we had to say, okay, we got enough of that. Let's pivot to other ways we can help, and people have jumped in on that. I honestly think we have one of the most generous communities in the world, and I've seen it time and time again. You know, I mean, this goes back more than 20 years when I went to Ground Zero after 9/11, and so many police and fire families were decimated. And at that time, there was no mechanism. They immediately had their livelihood cut off, and these families had no income whatsoever. And so I started raising money in this area for the New York firefighters and police officers, and we raised hundreds of thousands of dollars in very short order and gave it to those families before they got any assistance from anyone else. That's this community. That's the heart and soul of this community. So, you know, I just say thank you.
What about the landlord? Usually when you're renting, the landlord or somebody will come in and do a maintenance check. What are they saying?
Well, the landlord's the one that actually called in a welfare check he said he hadn't heard from who he thought was the tenant for a period of time, and she hadn't paid her rent since October. So, I mean, typically a landlord would respond if there's complaints about something not working, but he was unaware of any of this. He actually sent us there to check on what he thought was his tenant, and that's when we found the kids.
And what's going to happen to that apartment or that townhouse right now? I mean, is it dangerous for the people that are, next door? It's a kind of compact area.
Yeah, that will probably be up to the health department and other folks that will have to make a determination of how they move that forward. I mean, when we processed that scene for evidentiary value, our folks were wearing hazmat suits. I mean, on every level, it's a biohazard.
How about any debriefing for the officers who found that? Do they go through any kind of debriefing? That's got to be kind of hard for them.
That's horrific. I mean, again, I've been in this business a long time. The worst thing for our folks, our men and women on the front lines, is when they have an issue with kids. Because most of them, bring that home in a way that connect. They look at their kid and they see the other kid in this situation, and they just begin to, personalize it, and it tears them up. So thankfully, we've got a great peer-to-peer program, and that was initiated immediately once we learned what the situation was, to both debrief them and make sure that they have some opportunity to process what they were involved in and how to, in a healthy way, move forward. After you see some of the terrible things we see in our world, homicides and abuse, you'll never unsee it, but you have to find a healthy way to process it and then take another step forward and go back out and continue to do your job.
Were comfort dogs like Callie brought into the kids at the hospital and things, and how did that go?
Yes, I think 2 came right away, and that's been, here Callie sits in this corner. Our comfort dogs have been involved in so many tragedies. When I started this program, I thought, well, this will be helpful here and there. It's almost a daily thing. It is daily if you consider how it helps our people. But, think where these dogs have been. They've been to Oxford. They've been to the splash pad scene. They've been to suicides. They've been to, one thing after another. And I think they make an amazing difference.
Do you have any information at all as to why this mom would do this for years to her children?
Not at this point. They're going to, again, try to ask her some more questions. That's all part of the investigation, how or why. I don't think there's never going to be an answer any of us can understand or accept on the why. How do you? Anybody that's a parent looks at their kids and thinks, what a blessing, what a gift. And to allow this to happen, I don't think anyone, whether you have kids or not, will ever wrap your head around. But, maybe we can get some insight what she was thinking, but it will never satisfy any of us.
Do we know where she was living while they were living there?
Elsewhere in Pontiac.
Like a friend's house? Was it a family member?
Who was she living with?
Yeah.
I probably won't get into that at this point.
It seems just kind of elaborate that she'd go to all these lengths trying to hide it from her family and all this. What stands out about this to you, Sheriff?
Yeah, the complexity of it, the length of it, on so many levels, it's just hard, again, to wrap your head around. If you don't want to be a parent, then there's mechanisms in place. There's methodologies to either give your child up for adoption or to other family members. There's never an excuse to abuse your child or abandon your kids. There just isn't. There's so many people that are just wanting a child in their life out there. And I know there's, a lot of kids that haven't been adopted, but anything's better than this. If that's not in your wheelhouse to be a parent, then, let someone else have a chance at that role.
Thank you.
Right, very disturbing story out of Oakland County, Michigan there, as now the mom is in custody after this investigation showed just horrible living situation for these three children out in Pontiac, Michigan there. So again, Oakland County Sheriff's Office putting this out there saying we have arrested a Pontiac woman in a child abuse case. The sheriff's thoughts on this case saying throughout my extensive career in this field, I have never encountered a scenario as dire and prolonged as this one involving abandonment, neglect, and abuse of the highest power there. So yeah, just a sad story all the way around right there.